I'm Laura Vitale, and on this episode of Laura in the Kitchen, I'm going to show you guys how to make my grandmother's meatballs. They're a family favorite, and I wouldn't dream of making a Sunday sauce without them. So, a little bit about them. They're very simple, basic meatballs made like traditionally in the southern part of Italy, where I'm from in Naples. This is how we make them. There's a few key things you must do in order for these meatballs to come out really nice and sort of juicy and moist and so flavorful. So let's go over the ingredients and we'll go cooking them up. You're gonna need a mix of ground veal, beef, and pork, some fresh homemade breadcrumbs, some Parmigiano Reggiano, a finely chopped onion, few fresh basil leaves, a clove of garlic, 1 tablespoon of whole milk, 1 egg, some tomato puree, salt and pepper, and you're also going to need extra virgin olive oil or regular olive oil, and you're going to need some red wine just to help make the sauce so good. All right, so first thing I'm going to tell you guys that this is my grandmother's famous recipe for her meatballs, and I could not imagine Sunday night dinner without them. So there are a couple things that she does. I mean, they're very simple, very easy, but there's a few things in there that she says makes a meatball as good as they are, which is true. One of those things is to mix your ingredients for the meatballs before you add the meat in. Otherwise, you'll overwork it. So we're going to start with some homemade breadcrumbs, and I just use the inside of Italian bread and just process it in the food processor to get fresh homemade breadcrumbs. And we're going to moisten that with the 1 tablespoon of whole milk. My grandmother says that the whole milk breaks down and makes everything really moist, which she's right about. I'm going to use 1 egg. Okie doke. And you can see I'm doing everything in one big bowl, and I'm just going to mix all the filling ingredients first before adding the meat so we don't overwork it. That's a huge mistake people do. I have 1 clove of garlic that I'm going to just grate in. You can always just chop it finely. You want to like mince it really well, but a microplane really works for this because I don't want anyone to bite down on a big piece of garlic in the meatball. Get rid of those 2. There we go. Now we're going to need some Parmigiano Reggiano. Lots of it. Oh, I can't imagine Sunday night dinner without meatballs in the sauce. Oh. You're going to need about 3 to 4 tablespoons. I use about 1/4 cup, about 4 tablespoons of the Parmigiano Reggiano, and it must be good Parmigiano Reggiano. And I'm going to just use a couple of basil leaves, not very many, just to have it through the beef. And I'm just going to finely mince this as well. I want everything kind of chopped small. Like so. And like I said, it's not very much because basil can be really strong. So this is just going to be a little bit just to echo the fresh basil we're going to put in the sauce at the end. You're going to season it with some salt and pepper. Not too much salt because we have a lot of Parmigiano in there. And that's very salty, as we all know it. Okay, now using a fork, always using a fork when you make meatballs. You're just going to mix this together first. Okay, that's all nice and mixed up. Our ground meat mixture. Don't want to overwork this. Here we go. We got everything mixed really well together. Now, the ground meat mixture is called a meatloaf mix, and every supermarket carries meatloaf mix, which ground pork, veal, and beef. So, okay. These are really moist meatballs, and you don't want to overwork them, so just make the size you want, okay? I make smaller meatballs just because they're perfect size if you want to eat them with ziti or if you want to put them in a hoagie roll. My last meatball, and just remember guys, you don't want to compress the meatball, otherwise you'll get a really dry meatball, just until it comes together. That simple. All right. Let's go over to the stove. I'm going to wash my hands. We'll start cooking these up and then we'll start braising them. Now, I have a pan here with high sides. You can use, you really can't use a skillet. You have to use something with high sides because we're going to braise these in a tomato and wine sauce. So you want to make sure you have enough room in there. And I put about 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and I got it nice and hot over medium-high heat. I'm actually going to do this with my hands. And I'm going to sear my meatballs on both sides. in batches. I do not, in any shape or form, want to overcrowd my pan. Otherwise, they will steam instead of get nice and brown on all sides. So this is probably, yep, 2 batches will do just fine. And don't flip them too many times. Flip them once. That's it. You want a nice color at the bottom, nice color at the top. You don't have to cook them all the way through. They're going to braise and cook away. So let these go for a couple minutes on each side and then put in the second batch and then we'll start braising them together. Just kind of taking my second batch out, and that's what I'm looking for. Just a nice color on each side. Not totally, you know, we don't need color on every single side of the meatball. Just gonna remove them carefully. These meatballs are very fragile, so you want to be careful with them. Smells already so good in here. Now, same pan, over the same heat, in the same juices, because that's got so much flavor. I'm gonna add in my small, finely chopped onion. You want to make sure it's finely chopped. And it's just like picking up all that great flavor. See those little brown bits from the meatballs? That is fantastic flavor right there. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of salt on the onion itself just to help it sweat a little bit. And you know me, I like to flavor every layer of my dish. I'm just going to cook this about 5 minutes, just until it starts to cook down. I'm letting my onions cook for about 5 minutes, and they're starting to cook down exactly how I want them. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add about 3/4 of a cup of red wine. Now, I just want to give you guys, I have a lot of questions from you guys about, well, what kind of wine do you cook with? Okay, whenever I use red wine, I always use a Merlot. Anytime I cook with white wine, I use a Pinot Grigio. So, and it does not have to be the most expensive. It just, you want to make sure you like, if you would drink it, because it just concentrates the flavor and it would taste awful if it's not something that's worth drinking. Just let this cook for literally 1 minute. I let my wine cook for about a minute, and now I'm going to add in my tomato puree. I just want to make sure I get every bit out. I'm going to use about 1.5 cans. That's perfect. And I'm going to put just a little bit of water in the one that I used the whole can of, and just swish it around. I'm going to give this a good mix, because once I add in my meatballs, I'm going to submerge them inside the sauce, and then I won't really be able to mix it as well, because I'll break up the meatballs because they're still raw. I'm just putting all my meatballs in the sauce. Turn it down to low. Almost done. Just have a few more. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of sauce in there, but that's really important because these meatballs are going to cook for about 1 hour and 45 minutes, and they're going to get really nice and juicy. Now, one of the things that you cannot get away with is not sauteing the meatballs first, because that little bit of color gives it so much flavor, and it also gives flavor to the oil that we saute the onions in. So that's a step you cannot get away with not doing. So I'm just going to turn this down to low, and I'm going to cover this and just leave a little bit, just like that, little open area for the steam to escape. Otherwise, we'll collect so much water on the top, and that's not what I want. So, partially covered, low, for about 1 hour and 45 minutes, stirring it every now and then, but do not break up those meatballs. So be very gentle. Smells so good. These have been cooking for about 1 hour and 45 minutes. Perfect. Now I'm just going to season it with salt and pepper, because we actually didn't season the sauce. We seasoned the meatballs and the onions, and some black pepper, and a few fresh basil leaves. Tear them up. Give this a nice little toss. It smells incredible in here. I wish you could smell this. I'm just going to taste it really quickly. Make sure the seasonings are on point. So good. Okay. Turning this off. Let's go to the counter so we can start eating them. This smells amazing. I wish you were here to smell this. Now, how you want to serve it's totally up to you. You can serve it over polenta, with pasta, over rice, however you want it. But my personal way of eating it is right in here, in between slices of really nice crunchy Italian bread, just like my grandfather would. Okay, before I make myself a sandwich, I'm going to just show you what one looks like. That sauce is so thick, you can barely, you could put a spoon and stand up in there. Look at that. First of all, it cuts through like butter. It's so tender. And it smells divine. I'm just going to give it a bite. My nonna would be very proud. These are just like hers. They're so good. I mean, and they're so easy. And if you're anything like me where you love really good Italian meatballs, you definitely need to try out this recipe. It's so good, and it's out of this world easy. I hope you guys have enjoyed spending time with me. To get this recipe and other recipes, check out my website, www.laureninthekitchen.com. I'll see you next time. Bye.